When I set out to create Tony Hawktober in 2017, I had two goals in mind. The first was to try and break down the stereotypes of what a channel special actually meant, doing a week-long event instead of a month, with episodes that hopefully felt like something on a new level compared to the standard content being produced for a channel. But the second goal was to simply gain experience. I always wanted to make a top 10 Tony Hawk levels video. A simple, tired concept really, but me being me, I didn't feel like it was right to do that without having played every single level first, just on the chance that I may have missed the best level. Hawktober was merely created as a way to quickly rush through all of that, just so that I could make this top 10 video. And I did. Many creators like to keep dragging events like this out until they're tired and played out, which again, I really wanted to try and avoid that happening with my stance on trying to make something different to everyone else. I figured out while working on the first special that Hawktober had a solid 3 years worth of content. The Rise, covering some of the fan favourites and my personal introduction to the series, this went over well and people really enjoyed it, but for the channel numbers, it honestly didn't leave that much of an impact at all for how much work went into that first year. But it did do one thing really special. It sparked the interest of people. I had comments on a regular basis for an entire year in anticipation of the second year's event, The Demise. This was about covering the worst of the worst. It didn't need dumb skits with me pretending to skate to make the videos entertaining, as the topics spoke for themselves and offered more than enough material to work with. 2018 special, now this did leave a mark on the channel in a major way, shattering every single number record that I had previously. Video views, comments, likes, shares, subscribers and Patreon growth were all shattered in a mere week of content. How on earth was I going to top that? Simple answer really. I wasn't going to top that. And that's okay. Setting up for the 2019 event, it was by total chance that it just so happened to land on the 20th anniversary of the series. It couldn't have been more perfect. Unfortunately, the entire year of 2019 was against me getting this finished. Without going into details, a lot happened this year that delayed the production of other big projects I was working on, which drastically reduced my dedicated time for working on Hawktober. With my original plans, I would have had almost all of August and September fully free to get this finished, but instead, I had most of September to get the bulk of the work done, with many episodes only being completed at the absolute last moment in October. But before any of that can happen, the games need to be played. The start of getting through all of these games began on June 10th, 2 days after my birthday and just 1 day after a funeral. Yeah, I said 2019 was a rough year. The bulk of playing games lasted all of June through until mid-August as I reached the mobile games. 2 full months of exclusively playing Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, twice as long as normal. The original plan for year 3 was to do 7 videos, moving up from 5 and then 6 from the previous years. However, it occurred to me prior to playing anything that that plan simply wasn't realistic. So instead, 10 videos across 2 weeks was decided as a way to both prolong the event, but also to give certain episodes a lot more focus. It's still the same amount of content, so it was no extra work. If anything, it made things easier. Before any work began on actual episodes, it was time to finally launch the Hawktober merch. This was something I wanted available the previous year, however in retrospect, running out of time for that may have been a blessing in disguise, as the 2018 event is what established the event. But to promote this, I needed an advertisement. I wanted it to be really dumb, parodying cheesy ads, while also getting all of the information across, and I'm really happy with the end result. I tried to keep things super simple with just a shirt and hoodie option, with various styles and sizes at the lowest price I can offer to make things as accessible as possible. It was a no-frills approach, and I think it worked well. I took my shirt to the skate park to film the ad and asked a totally random skater if he'd mind doing some tricks for me wearing the shirt. He was really stoked to have Hawktober as his first skating sponsor. Originally, I was going to get on my board and fool around like I've done in the past, but I decided against it. For one, the joke is incredibly played out and exhausted for me, but second and more importantly, I can't do it because of my bad legs. But if there is one thing I've learned making Hawktober, it's that the people at the park are always keen to show off their ability for a camera. This entire advert was made in just 3 or 4 hours across 2 weeks. Super rush job to give people plenty of time to order before the event started. By this point, it was the beginning of September. 7 out of the 10 episodes were written, and it was time to begin shooting episodes and getting the entire thing underway. I was up against a strict time frame, as well as numerous levels of burnout and other mental health and related issues in my personal life, and let me just say, this special really took it out of me. I prefer to get up and work all day. I'm never productive after dark. Hawktober 2019 completely changed that, as I simply had no choice. I even delayed the release by a full week just for more time, which was absolutely necessary in the end. This was roughly 6 to 7 weeks of 14-hour days, 7 days a week. I do not recommend it. It's incredibly unhealthy and isolating. However, like I mentioned, I was fighting against my own issues at the time, and it was something to focus on to take my mind off of those things. Now, rather than go into extensive detail on the making of each individual episode, I'm going to cover things more generally here, with a few exceptions. If you'd like more details on individual episodes, definitely consider backing the $2 tier on Patreon to see a detailed blog for each week of Hawktober, along with all of the rewards on offer. If it wasn't for Patreon, Hawktober wouldn't exist, so if you think I've earned it, it's a great way to support the channel. But yeah, to keep things simple in this video, let me just go over a few general things. Like I mentioned, there was originally only going to be 7 episodes. Portable Pro Skater games, both on the Color and Game Boy Advance episode, were originally going to be a single video. As you can see looking at the runtimes, that would have been a 30-minute video. Not cool. So splitting them up helped to give everything a lot more focus. The problem with covering handheld games though, especially ones that are okay, as is for any good game, is that there really isn't much to say about them. And that's a fact that really hurt the first week of the special this year, in my opinion. If it was 2017, these would have included a lot of those dumb skateboarding skits, but like I said, I can't do that shit anymore. So rather than focus on that, I tried to have a more analytical approach instead of forcing out jokes for the sake of jokes. After all, we are only looking at all of these weak games to gain the experience in preparation of the top 10 Tony Hawk levels video. One of the biggest controversies this year was my scoring of these handheld games. Many people were not happy with me saying things like, "This is a great port, 5 out of 10, assuming that means it's average at best. So let me clarify what's going on here. Every single game ever needs to fit onto an even rating system. But a 5 out of 10 for a Game Boy title is not equal to a 5 out of 10 on console. There is no way you can say that this game is great, then show you the watered down version with half the content, restricted control scheme due to the system it's on, and weaker graphics, and say that it's equal, even if it is an amazing port. In the grand scheme, Pro Skater 2 on GBA is an average game at 5 out of 10. But by the standards of the GBA system alone, it is definitely worthy of a 6 out of 10 in my opinion. I don't purposefully retract points because it's a handheld, I just focus my scores on an overall scale. So I hope that clears things up, and always remember, this rule can be applied to all of my scores for handheld games. Just give it a little +1, and that's how it ranks amongst all of the other games on that system. One thing a lot of people took notice of this year was the music I was using in each episode. I always try to have a good selection of punk rock skating tunes that fit with the aesthetic that the amazing Pro Skater soundtracks crafted over the years. But of course, that's all licensed music, so I can't use it. And it pains me that I was never really able to capture that part of the experience in these videos. In 2019, however, I was given permission to use songs from the album Kick Blips. It's a bunch of awesome tracks from the original 4 Pro Skater titles converted into chiptune music by a bunch of amazing talented musicians, and the inclusion of recognisable music was really something special this year. So I'd like to give a massive thanks to that team for letting me use the music. Do go and support them via the links on screen and in the description below. Buy their album and even play their free online game if you want to. Cheers, guys. American Skateland was another episode that had to be split across multiple videos. Originally, it was going to also include coverage of Project 8 on PSP, given the classic mode there is incredibly similar to Wasteland's classic mode. However, the GBA version of Skateland actually had a lot to talk about, unlike a lot of these, which gave this episode a much needed injection of more personality driven content versus purely analytical, compared to all of the other episodes in this first week. A great example of how breaking episodes up into smaller videos really helped the overall consistency of video quality. But it was all of the DS titles that really make it so clear how important this decision was to go from 7 episodes up to 10. The original plan was to have Downhill Jam on DS, Downhill Jam on Game Boy Advance, and Tony Hawk's Motion all within a single episode. Motion on its own was a 25-minute video in the end, on top of the 16 minutes of Downhill Jam. And this was before I even knew that Proving Ground on DS even existed. I discovered that sometime in February of 2019, and it was seeing that get lumped into this already overstocked episode that made me realise these were not going to work. Motion absolutely needed to be a standalone episode, and for me, that was my episode of Hawktober 2019, without a doubt, my favourite and in my opinion, most important to get right, only behind the top 10 levels video. So splitting these up definitely benefited both Motion and I think Downhill Jam as well. Proving Ground on DS, however, really had no substance to it whatsoever. So I decided to throw Project 8 on PSP into that episode just to give it something additional with a surprise review. And even then, it's the shortest and weakest episode of the special. That video was fully scripted in under an hour, filmed within an hour or so, and edited in under 3 hours. That's a 5-hour episode, and it really shows. However, sometimes that can just be a necessary evil when you're covering everything. Onto the mobile episodes, this was another hurdle in regards to hardware. I already had to source a PSP and original DS capture card system for everything else, but Tony Hawk mobile games would be incomplete without covering the one physical mobile game, that being Pro Skater on the N-Gage. Finding a working N-Gage was incredibly difficult. Many deals fell through, and the one system I actually purchased didn't end up working. Thankfully, I did get some money back on my purchase, but it was placing a Facebook ad looking to rent an N-Gage that saved the day. big thanks to Russell for renting me, a total stranger, his device to use in this episode. Cheers, mate. Now, just for reference, this was the beginning of October. PAX Australia was around the corner at the worst possible time given how busy I was. The first 7 episodes, including the first full week, were surprisingly finished prior to me leaving for that weekend trip, giving me 2 weeks to complete the mobile games episode. The first day home from PAX is when I played the N-Gage Pro Skater. To keep the device steady for the camera, I actually used a vice grip and rested it there gently to keep it in place while I was playing. Not ideal if you have a bad back, but it worked. Skate Jam also had a major hardware issue in that I didn't own a mobile phone. Weird, right? I've just never needed to own one since I finished college back in 2014. So, I also had to find a decent phone as cheap as possible that could also make capturing gameplay easy. With those episodes finished in time for the first week of Hawktober to begin, there was only one video left to complete. The Top 10 Tony Hawk Levels episode. Between the first Hawktober in 2017 and the second event in 2018, I had an epiphany. If I'm playing every single level in a franchise, I don't just have the experience of the best it has to offer, I also have the worst. I fucking hate all of these people who make ranking videos in the cheapest, low-effort ways imaginable, some even going as far to not speak and just show you gameplay clips. But at the same time, I'm jealous of just how clickable these videos are. They're so enticing to click on, it's torture. And that's when it hit me. What if I ranked everything? Absolutely everything as a tribute to the series for its 20th anniversary and create something that hasn't been seen before. Every Tony Hawk level ranked. And not only am I going to make it, but I'm going to do it my way and give well thought out reason behind every single spot on the list and make a crazy long video. I know if I was scrolling YouTube and saw every level ranked and a 2+ hour runtime, I'd be like, are you for real? And I'd have to click on it. The entire concept of the video is that it is a big marathon with no stone unturned, that once you realise what's happening, you can't help but sit and watch. So I fucking did it, and it's the single most successful video I've ever had. We'll get back to that. Let's first cover some of the process it took to reach that point. I don't want to give away my secret formula too much, so bear with me here. It's a multiple step process to get every eligible level listed, then ranking within its individual game, then I simply compare the bottom position level of each game against each other, and by process of elimination, work my way through until everything is ranked. These positions tended to fluctuate across this process, but for the most part, I was absolutely sure about my bottom spot and my number 1 before any ranking or writing began. The rest was simply filling in the blanks. The finished script was 36 pages long, and I did my best to structure things in a segmented way to make multiple session viewing a lot easier to keep track of. Recording the voiceover was a full 5 hours across 2 sessions. Editing the audio, now listen, I hate cleaning up audio for even the simplest of videos, it's just a pain in the ass. So I was shocked to find myself really enjoying editing this 5 hours of audio. Because everything was so cut up and segmented, it was easy to find good points to start and stop. With 5 hours to get through, I set aside an hour each night to chip away at it, and it naturally became a competition for myself. How much can I get done within the hour? An hour each night for only 4 nights to get through 5 hours. It was like a well-oiled machine. Now, this was all done in September on the side, so by the time it came to editing this episode, I was set up and ready to just jump straight in. Editing this video was something else. It took a full 6 days and was finished on the day that Proving Ground on DS was uploaded, 4 days before the levels video needed to be released. The first 2 days of editing were incredibly smooth, fun and efficient, but once I hit the hour mark of the video, things started going wrong. Program crashes and glitches, along with a heap of slowdown. This was all done on a single timeline, and by the time I reached 2 hours of the video up to Hawaii, which was number 17 out of 165, it completely died. The file simply wouldn't work. It would take the program 2 to 3 minutes to load a single change on the timeline if it didn't crash. I was a stubborn fool to let it reach that point, and I definitely won't attempt to do everything in a single timeline in future levels ranked videos. The final 16 spots were done separately, then inserted into the original timeline to create one master edit of the full 2.5 hours. Rendering that file was started at about 3 AM and took 8.5 hours to fully render. Then fixing little mistakes and re-rendering still required an additional 4 or 5 hours to complete. But what can I say, it was absolutely worth it, and it's a passion project I've sat on for a long time, all the way back to 2015, when I originally wanted to make a top 10 Tony Hawk levels video, and it was both exciting and anxious finally seeing it completed. Hawktober 2019 in general did not even come close to the numbers of the previous year, which I'll admit was a massive disappointment. Average number of views after 48 hours for Hawktober in 2018 was about 10,000 views. This year, it was half of that in the same time, and even now, a month after the special, some of those episodes still have not come close to 10,000 views, with some just barely scraping over. That is a real shame for all of the sacrifice and tears that went into this project. Underground Remix was a surprise hit, and Motion thankfully performed well. However, every Tony Hawk level ranked smashed many of the channel number records the previous Hawktober set, and it smashed them on its own. And I'll admit, I was stunned. I was expecting this video to bomb, and it did the complete opposite. So I owe a massive thank you to every single person who shared that video on Facebook, Twitter, on Reddit, to all of my peers who were supportive of the project and Hawktober as a whole, and to all of the people in passing who had never even heard of me, never heard of Hawktober, some who had never even played a Tony Hawk game, who still watched the episode and shared it around. I can't express how much that means to me, and thank you for sticking with me through the roughest year of my life and allowing me to keep making stuff. So, in a way, while the event of Hawktober 2019 was somewhat of a failure due to the weak response in comparison with previous years, it was still a major success, and that's what keeps me motivated. But it's also the response from people that proved to me Hawktober has become something special. It's not just my passion project anymore, it's something that we can all share and enjoy, and I'd like to discuss that impact right now. While attending PAX Australia the week before Hawktober began this year, I got to meet a lot of awesome people and talk to them. Every single person had something to say about Hawktober and the Pro Skater series that it dawned on me. This franchise isn't just some niche thing like wrestling and wrestling games, for example. Almost everyone has been exposed to this series of games, or skateboarding in general, at some point in their lives. One person I spoke to in particular actually shared their story with me of growing up skating and snowboarding until they suffered a bad injury that meant they couldn't do it anymore. And during their recovery period, when they couldn't be active or do much, they were still able to enjoy the topic of skating thanks to watching YouTube and finding my channel way back when I hit just 1,000 subscribers, back in July of 2015. Now, for any of you Square-Eyed Jack historians out there, what was the first game I reviewed after hitting 1,000 subscribers? Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2. Hearing this really gave me a new perspective on what all of this means, not just for me, but for other people. And I can also really relate with that story, not being able to skate myself because of my bad legs. So I'd like to thank Tay for sharing this with me. You can hear more about this story over on Tayson's Gaming Spot. I'll link to a video on screen now. Definitely check him out and show him some support, cause he's a great dude. On a different level, this fella's family have actually created their own Hawktober tradition of getting together to watch the episodes each year. Now that blows my fucking mind right there. You've got a whopper family, mate, with great taste in content, if I do say so myself. But yeah, that's just insane to me how much these dumb little videos mean to people. It's almost like they're not just dumb little videos, you know? It feels good to know that people support your creativity and that there is a mutual respect there. One final story, Ian here used to do a lot of downhill skating from what I've been told. You don't really do many tricks in downhill skating because you'll fucking die, so he set a Hawktober goal to learn some new tricks and he nailed them like an absolute champ. I'll link to his video as well in the cards and in the description below if you want to go and check that out. It's just so amazing to see the response Hawktober has gotten from everyone. Shit, the merch, that did so much better than I thought it would as well, which again, I can't express how much that means to me, and seeing this reaction has really inspired me to keep working away at this thing because it actually does mean something, so thank you so much. Where does this leave Hawktober? We've completed all 3 years. Clearly it has started to grow a little tired already, given the performance of many of the videos this year. I'm exhausted. Where do we go from here? I never really wanted to completely forget the event after completing the 3 years, even back before I started. I figured just doing something little each year to commemorate the occasion would be a nice tribute and wouldn't get as tired or be as much work as doing the full special each year. So we'll see what happens. I understand that kind of makes me a massive hypocrite to now suddenly conform with the YouTube norms that this event set out to break, but whatever. Hawktober has taught me a lot about time management and running a channel in ways I could have never predicted, and starting in 2020, I will be trying to run things differently, which is a decision based on what I've learned making this special. So, what's the future of Hawktober? I'll just say this. If I feel like making a week's worth of Hawktober episodes in the future, then that's awesome, because I do certainly have ideas, and you're all pestering me about Disney's Extreme Skate Adventure, so I guess I've got to do that at some point. But if I don't feel like making a week special and just want to settle with a standalone episode, or a gameplay video, or even just something as simple as a Tony Hawk live stream to commemorate the occasion, then that's okay too, you know? And on top of that, if I want to cover something Tony Hawk or skating related in any other month of the year, I'd like to be able to do that too. It's all about getting back to a point of greater freedom. Doing this takes months of my life, and it's definitely reached its breaking point, so I would like to take a more casual approach from now on, and I hope that everyone is okay with that. I do feel like I've earned it, admittedly. What the future holds, I don't really know, but I do know that it will be exciting no matter which road we drive down. And with that, I think it's time to end this video. I'd like to remind everyone to consider pledging $2 or more per month over on Patreon to unlock more detailed info on the individual Hawktober episodes if this video just wasn't enough for you, because it's a great way to support this thing that I'm doing if you think I've earned it. There is also Hawktober merch, of course, but most importantly, commenting, liking and sharing videos is always the simplest way to show some support. If you've got further questions about anything, drop a comment below and I'll try to get back to you. Thank you all so much for watching and sticking with Tony Hawktober for the past 3 years, and until next time, I'm Square Eye Jack and I hope you have a great fucking day. Thanks for watching.